the place of humanity and human dignity is higher in priority when it comes to governance and legislation. The innate quest for socio-economic survival and liberty embedded in the quest by man to explore nature and opportunities around him is sometimes curtailed by rising complexities. As part of the move to address these rising complexities, it is the launch of a revolutionary approach by the African leaders on the 6th of December 2016 under the auspices of African Union, known as the African Union Convention for the Protection and Assistance of Internally Displaced Persons in Africa. It is the world's first continental instrument that legally binds governments to protect the rights and well-being of people forced to flee their homes by conflict, violence, disaster, and human rights abuses. This is known as the Kampala Convention. What the convention overlooked and left out considerably is the right of these internally displaced persons when they cross sovereign borders and become refugees and migrants in a foreign country. President Obama once described the refugee crisis as a test of our common humanity. He added as saying, we must recognize that refugees are a symptom of a larger failures, be it war, ethnic tensions, or persecution. The volume of migrants and refugees trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea and East African desert to reach Europe is so staggering to the point that little attention is drawn to the actual refugee situation within the African subcontinent. There are 3 countries in Africa, among others, that have witnessed such large influx of refugees in the past 5 years. These are Niger Republic, Ethiopia, Uganda, and Uganda. These 3 countries had different policies on handling and management of refugees. Niger Republic, for instance, received about 200,000 Nigerian refugees fleeing the northeastern Boko Haram insurgency, and at the same time, it was hosting other refugees from Libya and Egypt, Chad, from Chad, etc. With the influx of victims of insurgency and human tragedy, Niger Republic was unable and still cannot feed and provide protection to all the refugees. This is largely due to its economic fragility. At Difa, a border town close to southern Borno of Nigeria, the refugees were mostly left with little or no tangible intervention or aid. They remained vulnerable to the insurgents who sought refuge around the Lake Chad area, a close proximity to the refugee settlement in Difa. The refugees are therefore exposed to danger of being attacked by the same Boko Haram insurgents hitherto they run away from. When we visited Zindar and Difa in Niger Republic back in 2015, we met a young woman called Hawa, a Nigerian refugee residing in Difa. She told us that what is stopping the insurgents from attacking them is because their families were living with them in the open camp. She said she and other refugees were squatting in other parts of Niger, but they all moved to Difa when they heard the news about the food distribution going on by humanitarian agencies. Unfortunately, since their arrival on the camp, no food was given to them except for the 1,500 initial refugees that received food cards. More than half of this population was living under extreme weather conditions with no adequate shelters, health facilities, or free water. Why? Because the government had to charge whoever comes to dig a well, because they have a contamination issue, so they have to do all the tests and everything, but the government cannot fund that, so they had to charge a fee. And that means whoever digs a well would have to charge people collecting water. Upon all this, they all lived under such a deplorable condition. In the case of Ethiopia, according to Suleiman Momodu, Ethiopia hosts nearly 740,000 refugees, mostly from Somalia, Eritrea, Sudan, and South Sudan. It is the largest refugee population in a single African country. Ethiopia maintains an open door policy that welcomes refugees and allows unhindered access to humanitarian services and protection. Uganda took a step further by allowing its guests opportunities to settle and domesticate opportunities for prosperity, just like what you are saying should be done. Uganda granted South Sudanese refugees unconfined movement, employment opportunities, and land for building new homes and also for farming. This humanitarian gesture has gone a long way in helping the refugees live a seemingly normal life. The UNHCR Assistant High Commissioner for Refugees Protection, Volker Turk, once commended countries that continue to keep their borders open, providing refugees with opportunities to start anew, by citing Uganda's generous refugee law and policy regime, which is worthy of emulation. The Cameroonian government acted contrary to what Niger Republic did to Nigerian refugees. Stories of malnutrition of Nigerian refugees from areas bordering Cameroon reported to have gone to an alarming rate of avoidable dehumanizing situation. Men of particular age range were strictly not allowed to cross the border, and the women folk had to pay money to the security agents to be allowed to cross into safety. According to a report by Premium Times in 2015, Cameroon, a non-member country of the ECOWAS, was accused of dehumanizing Nigerian refugees by chasing about 2,600 of them after their territory without informing Nigerian officials, in gross violation of international etiquettes on refugee management. Cameroonian officials reportedly piled the Nigerian refugees into trucks and dumped them in the border communities of Adamawa State. Most of the returnees had lamented an unfriendly environment and inhuman treatment they had to endure in Cameroon before the government finally hauled them out. The refugees claimed the Cameroonian gendarmeries evacuated about 12,000 Nigerians in just 4 days by cramping them into small vehicles and taking them back to Nigeria. This is a report by NEMA. All these accounts indicate clearly the absence of an internationally accepted guidelines and practice for the management of refugees and migrants, which expose them to unsolicited, undignified treatment from the host countries. The situation of a migrant differs from that of a refugee. This is because the nature of displacement varies, as the migrant is on economic self-fulfilling drive, while the refugee is conditioned by unnegotiated natural and human circumstances. However the situation, they both need protection and help. It was reported recently, which is on the news every time, recently, that 26 young Nigerian girls between the ages of 14 and 20 died while crossing the Mediterranean Sea from Libya to Europe. And 70% of such migrants lose their lives trying to cross the North African desert, the Mediterranean Sea to European destinations. The argument here is, one, the situation of refugees in the Niger Republic is that of serious hunger, starvation, and stagnation. The host country, Niger, in itself is an economic situation which is established already. Secondly, the Cameroonian government presents a dehumanizing situation through a discriminating legislation. Now, and thirdly, the case of migrants dying in a thick desert or Mediterranean Sea is partly due to some of these tragedies that befall sub-African continents. Conclusively, the three related but peculiar pictures presented here is to call for an urgent and frantic intervention to save lives from perpetual disgraceful loss. As a quick intervention on the prevailing situation, there is need to interface with the Cameroonian authorities and other hostile authorities to review their anti-human laws to allow for more tolerance and respect for lives, as no law is sacred than man himself. This becomes also necessary for the sake of international collaboration and symbiotic relationships. Secondly, in the case of DIFA, the situation is highly pathetic, which requires more funds, camps, expansion of opportunities for the host government to allow the refugees to explore economic fortunes, as in the case of Uganda. On the mass exodus through hazardous routes, there is need to review Kampala Convention, which is geared towards the internally displaced people, to involve the refugees and migrants as a matter of urgency. The European community and African counterparts must, as a matter of urgency, enact laws to punish and deter these smugglers and block all the routes being used. Countries like Morocco, Niger, Libya, and Algeria should be empowered with surveillance equipment and training to apprehend migrants. Counseling and civic education should be intensified in originating countries, stressing the dangers of such trips to would-be migrants. The Times newspaper reported on in one of its headlines, 2 men are accused of smuggling after 26 girls were found dead in the Mediterranean. Now, with proper intervention, the headline should have read, 2 men have been arraigned for intending to smuggle migrants across the Mediterranean Sea. These 4 girls and 4,000 others that died between 2016 to date would still be alive if such measures are taken. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for change, and I believe we can achieve that change if we put ourselves to it. Thank you very much for listening.